You celebrate your life. Celebrate the good and the bad, the happy, the sad, the joy and the pain, the sun and the rain. Celebrate life. Celebrate your life with love.
Hello, 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 beloveds. Welcome to another episode of A Spiritual Remedy. My name is Sunshine Daye, and what a joy it is to greet you today on this Monday morning. And if you're watching later on during the week, hello to you as well. Listen, everybody, I have been on an amazing journey this last month, and I just want to say thank you to all of you who have tuned in, whether it's been live or whether it's been pre-recorded. I want to tell you how much I appreciate you for continuing to watch and to use the spiritual tools and to accept the loving support for your personal transformation. I see a world where clean and sober people, where people who are ready to lay down their mass distractions are living an amazing life, living their best life and loving it. Let me know where you are tuning in from. What's up, Nancy? It's so good to have you with us this morning. As always, a special thanks to you for your loving support. I appreciate you so very much. Last week, I recorded a message for you. I want to thank our production team, especially Reverend Kevin Cottle, for making sure that the message gets out, and Vida Spiritual Learning Center, which I get to be the spiritual director of, and just to be able to give you all of these messages and to be able to provide this loving support. Hey, Mahogany, what's up, beloved? We go way back, and I appreciate you and your support as well. Jan Ford, what's up? Thank you so much for your loving support. Last week's show, I touched on shame and guilt. Reverend George, what's up? What's up? It's so good to have you with us all the way from Palm Springs. Thank you so much for hanging out. Last week, I did a pre-recorded message, and I'm so happy for all of your support. And last week's message was on shame and guilt, and the response that I got from that shame and guilt, either live or afterwards, on shame and guilt, and how shame and guilt is actually, shame and guilt can actually be an addiction of its own. Did you know that? I mean, like, shame and guilt absolutely has these cunning, baffling, and silent ways of getting into our lives. Navigating this terrain of guilt and shame, it can be quite challenging, because as we are in sobriety, as we are looking at ways of improving our lives, of living our best lives, of not having mind-altering chemicals in our system so that we can live our best life, guilt and shame could also provide these chemical responses and reactions in our lives that are very similar to being under the influence of drugs and or alcohol. I mean, there are deep-seated and deep-rooted emotions that are associated with our past. And I do this as if our past is behind us, but really our past doesn't even exist anymore. And yet sometimes we hold on to the shame and guilt about things that we've done in our past, as if they are currently ruling our present moment. And I think that that's the pitfall of holding on to shame and guilt and not necessarily addressing shame and guilt. I want to know from all of you right now who are watching and who are tuned in, whether you're on LinkedIn, whether you are on YouTube, whether you are on Facebook, how does shame and or guilt or both of them together, how do they impact your life today? And I want to say this, that whether you're someone who's clean and sober or not, shame and guilt is and can be an addiction of its own, and it can really wreak havoc in our lives. So how is shame and guilt possibly wreaking havoc in your life? Go ahead and type something in the chat. And while you're doing that, shame and guilt, they're adversaries. They're both adversaries for people in recovery, and people who are on a spiritual path and on a spiritual trajectory, because they often act as like these unwelcome companions that linger on. And here we are, day to day, living our best lives or attempting to live our best lives and cleaning up any wreckage of our past and cleaning up any wreckage of our present moment. And yet there's this thing about shame and guilt. The ugly side of shame and guilt is that it manifests as relentless self-blame. How many of you are actively involved in self-blame, in blaming yourself, in replaying past mistakes, and constantly seeing inadequacies in your life? Shame can also be a heavier burden. I was just talking about guilt. Shame is actually a heavier burden in that it colors the perspective of the one feeling that shame with feelings of worthlessness, and sometimes this belief that you'll never attain life, and you'll never attain this place of I'm okay. Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Nancy says, shame and guilt isolate me from others. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Because when I'm feeling shame and guilt, or guilt and shame, right, I don't feel worthy to be a part of hanging out with other people. I'm less than. I see people as, big and bigger than me. And in fact, that's it. It's all made up. It's all what we make up in our minds. It's not the truth of who we are. So thank you for that, Nancy. Jan, thank you as well. Shame has me believe I'm not enough. When I got sober, I found out some of the shame I carried wasn't even mine. Ain't that the truth? When parents be like, shame on you for that. Like, a lot of that shame and guilt actually belongs to other people that they put upon us because they're feeling shame and guilt. And bless them. I mean, I'm sure they did the best they could with what they had. And for some people, it might have been on purpose, but so what? Now we have it. And now what do we get to do with it? And I think that that's the important part of this. And as we begin to really look at shame and guilt and being rid of shame and guilt, these emotions can be overwhelming triggers, and overwhelming triggers to isolate. So it doesn't have to mean to drink again or to use drugs again, but they can be triggers to isolate, to blame ourselves, to not become a part of, spiritual communities. And recognizing this and addressing this emotional, I want to call it baggage, but without further burdening any one of us who carry shame and guilt. But this is really emotional baggage, and we together can break free from some of this emotional baggage. One of the ways that I want to talk about today, that's a spiritual practice, is self-compassion. And that compassion for self is a fundamental talking point for me about, caring for myself, recovering from guilt and shame, is possible, and you can recover from guilt and shame, from shame and guilt, with some self-compassion. Now, yeah, you can try this on your own. You can try this with others. You can try this in spiritual community. And that self-compassion, thank you, Jan, that self-compassion comes from that place of forgiveness, right? It comes from that place of Yeah, that you first have to forgive yourself before you can forgive others. And having that compassion for self is a starting point. It is this place where I can begin to exercise by journaling positive affirmations, by being in prayer and meditation, and recognizing that I am the beautiful. I want to come up with a new word. Oh my gosh, you are the beautiful, unique, powerful, magnificent creation of the Most High. And that as that creation of the Most High, that right where I am, that which is true of infinite intelligence and infinite spirit is true of me. And as I begin to identify with that, as I begin to journal and actually highlight the areas of my life where I am whole, perfect, and complete, where my life is a life of spirit, where I'm getting better and better every day, where I continue to move forward, when I continue to journal with that, when I continue to pray and meditate on that which is true of spirit is true of me, I begin to show myself some compassion. I begin to use these affirmations, and they contribute to cultivating a life of self-compassion. And thank you, Jan, for saying that holding on to shame and guilt is spiritual pride. I'm going to also say that it's a spiritual bypass, and that, when we hold on to these things, that we're not allowing the infinite intelligence that is in us, as us, that is living as us, we don't allow it to shine. And so, beloved, what I am trusting is that, especially now, as we begin to close out 2023, that within your circle, within your group of people, within the people that you love and that you trust, that you begin to have these kind of conversations, and that you begin to seek the spiritual support necessary to shed from the shame and guilt that no longer serves you. The shame and guilt no longer serves you. And I'll tell you this really quickly, before we go, because I know my time is running out. But people with long-term sobriety, you are not exempt from shame and guilt. Oh, by the way, sometimes the way shame and guilt manifests itself in our life is by having a fear of making mistakes and falling short. It's difficulty in accepting praise when people give us compliments for things that we do. It's the avoidance of vulnerability. It's over apologizing. So shame and guilt shows up in a lot of ways. And so if you feel, and if you think that some of these signs are signs of shame and guilt, Jan knows what I'm talking about. Yes, yes, yes. It manifests in this way. So the idea here is to have that. Shame and guilt also shows up by not asking for help. I got this, or the shame and guilt. I'm too shameful to say that with this much sobriety, or because I've been clean, or because I've been abstinent from food or whatever, that I don't have this, right? It manifests itself, and it is time for us to be free from this. And believe me, I want to make sure that I assist you and provide the spiritual tools and the loving support for our transformation, because as you transform, I transform. As I transform, you transform. So I just want to remind us of two things right now. Two things, and one of those is to get onto our WhatsApp or our regular text in the U.S. gratitude list. You text me your gratitude, I text you my gratitude, and in this way we appreciate what we appreciate, appreciates, and it continues to grow. Also want to let you know that on January the 1st in beautiful Huntington Beach, California, live and in person, I will be hosting from 11 to 1 p.m. a visioning and vision board workshop for 2024. We do this on the first of every year so far. I've continued to have this be so. And for more information, make sure that you visit our website, vidaslc.org, where you can sign up for this visioning and vision board workshop. I had a participant in June from the 2023 workshop remind me. He said, "Hey, Sunshine, already almost everything on my vision board has come to pass." And the reason that is true is because what we do is we meditate first. We meditate first, and then we allow spirit to tell us what is our grand divine idea for 2024. And then we begin to choose from the pictures and things like that for our vision boards. And our vision boards aren't super large. I make them really, really bite-sized so that this way it is precise and it is exactly what is coming forth for your highest and best. So make sure you check our website for that. I too, Nancy, thank you. Am enjoying being back live. We've gone over time today, but so valuable and so wonderful to be able to be here with you today. And until next week, know that you are loved and I'm here for you. We are here for you. I love you. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to A Spiritual Remedy. Use the links in the description for prayer requests, to donate to Be That Spiritual Learning Center, and to join our mailing list. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And you can visit us at vidaslc.org for more information.